Today's show is sponsored by Indie Film Hustle's Filmmaker Process. We provide filmmakers with professional services to get their films or series funded, finished, and distributed. For more information, go to filmmakerprocess.com. So let me ask, all right, so you're working with Steve and the Steves, on Terminal. What is that like? Did Steve bring you in? I think it almost sounds like he Donnie Brasco'd you. He's a good fella. He can come in with me. So he kind of like vouched for you. You walked in and Steve's like, I want to work with you on the Terminal. How did you, first of all, how do you collaborate with him?
Well, it was Walter Parks, really, who I work with mostly. Walter Parks, who was then running DreamWorks, also a brilliant producer, who we developed the script together. And then initially what happened was that Tom Hanks came into it. I'm just thinking my first meeting with Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks said he would like to do the script. And then I went to meet him at his office in Santa Monica, and it was unbelievable. It was hilarious.
Well, what happened? What happened when you met Tom Hanks?
I can't remember. I think I said, I've got to do something really notable. I'll come up with a joke. So I think I came into his office and Walter Parks said, and here's Tom Hanks. And I looked at Tom and I looked at Walter and I said, but you said Tom Hulse. And Tom Hanks was like, and then he laughed his head off and then we became friends.
Oh my God. That's amazing. That's amazing.
I want a notable entry. It was hilarious. So we ended up having a good time, and I ended up being hired. So anyway, so he came on to Terminal. He wanted to do it. And then originally, actually, Sam Mendes was going to direct the film. And I met with Sam, and Sam was like, don't change a word of the script. And then it sort of all went quiet. And it was really weird. I was on a research trip with Tom Hanks in Europe, and we were working on this other project that unfortunately never got made. It was called Comrade Rockstar. It was a great project, and Tom was very into it at the time. And so we flew on the DreamWorks jet, which was also another.
Of course. Why wouldn't you?
I went with Tom and Walter, and we went to Berlin to do research and meet various people to do with the Comrade Rockstar story. And we were staying at the Adlon Hotel in Berlin. And, at this point, I didn't know what was happening with Terminal. I knew Tom was interested in it. I knew we were developing this other thing. And so Tom was on the Catch Me If You Can, press junket tour. Right. And I remember I got a call. Tom's driver or whatever called and said, there's a car downstairs, go and have dinner with Tom, right? So I got into the car and I go into this restaurant in Berlin, which I think was called Von or Vow. I can't remember. It was this big room with a gallery and a main floor. And there was this table of 20 people. And there was an empty chair at the end. And there was Walter Parks, Leonardo DiCaprio, Ethan Suplee, Tom Hanks or whatever. And then there was a guy not facing me, Anyway, so I walked in and Tom was with Steven. And Tom said, Steven, Sacha's here. And Steven Spielberg turned around to me and he said, congratulations, we shoot November the 5th. And I was like, what? What are we shooting? His moment where he said, I'm going to direct the Terminal. And I just was like, they were all laughing at me because I was just so...
I feel that I hear a theme here that I hear a theme here, Sacha, that when these giants, when the gods get together and they see the commoners walking among us, they like to poke fun at them, essentially, is what I hear.
Well, it was the same thing with Tom Hanks. It was the sweetest of all of the people.
Right.
All the actors. So, in fact, when Tom Hanks told me he was going to attach himself to the script, he said, I was at his office, he said, will you drive me home? I said, sure. I didn't really know. I thought maybe he couldn't afford Uber. I didn't really understand.
Yeah, don't give him change for the bus like you were going to do, Steve.
So I gave some bus tickets to Zalian, and then I thought, I'll help him with some vouchers. Anyway, so I'm driving. So Tom, this is a true story. So the mirror story is I'm driving with Tom. He's in the passenger seat. I'm driving. Very excited. I've sold my first script, and I've of course got a Cadillac because I'm an idiot. I'm finding that amusing. He said, "You're from Britain? Why did you lease a Cadillac?" And I said, "Because I'm from Britain." And so anyway, I'm driving along, and he says, "I'm just going to hold the steering wheel for just a minute." And I said, "Sure. Do you? Okay." So he holds the wheel, and he turns to me and he says, I'm going to star in Terminal. And I was like, because he knew I was going to have a moment. And so he held the wheel So Tom did that, and then we had the when Steven Spielberg told me he was directing the film in Berlin. So it was quite, you got to understand, this is my second movie. So I've done a small hairdressing comedy called The Big Tease at Warner Brothers that no one saw, which we made for $4 million. And then, suddenly I'm doing a Spielberg Hanks movie, number 2.
Right.
So it was like complete madness.
Oh my God. Now, but I have to ask you, because I told you off air, I absolutely adore The Terminal. I adore it. My wife and I watch it every few years because every once, between the story and the characters, and of course Hanks's performance and in Steven's direction. I mean, how did that story come together? Like, it's based on a real story, right?
Based on a true story called Alfred Nasseri, who lived for many years at Paris Airport, Charles de Gaulle. He was an Iranian dissident. It was a true story. An Iranian dissident who'd escaped into France illegally and came back to go to his home country. They discovered that he would probably be imprisoned or executed if he got on the plane back to Tehran. And so, but at the same time, he'd illegally been in France, so they wouldn't let him back out. And they said, just wait in the terminal a minute. So that was a whole story with, a lot of political complexity, and it was about many things. And we decided, well, look, let's just take the scenario of the man stuck in the airport based on the true story, and let's do something slightly different. So that became, Victor Navorsky and Krakozia and all of that stuff that was in the film. So, it's great because people love that movie. It's what some people loved it initially, not everyone, but over the years, it's become this kind of, it has its own life. And in England, I started to realize it's become a Christmas film on the BBC. Like 5 years ago, like it either plays Christmas Eve or Christmas Day on BBC One or BBC. It's sort of a bit of a tradition now. I didn't really realize that, but it's obviously great to be part of something like that. It was an extraordinary experience having this film made by obviously some of the greatest people I'd studied at film school, and then 6 months I'm working with them. I wouldn't listen without those guys. And Spielberg was he was extraordinary with me, incredibly generous. And it was hard, when this is happening to you, you don't really understand what's happening, and you don't handle it brilliantly. I didn't really. It's only like now, years later, that you really understand, my God, Steven Spielberg decided to make your movie. Wow. I kind of knew it at the time, but I really know now. And I really feel grateful to Steven and to Tom and to Walter and to Steve Zalian for really creating that whole scenario. So, I'm lucky.
Lucky. I can only imagine reading a textbook with Steven Spielberg in it, and then a few months later... or a year later working with him. I can't even comprehend that. To watch the rest of this interview, head over to bulletproofscreenwriting.tv.